Ever tried a dopamine detox? Or maybe you've pushed through total exhaustion, telling yourself you just need more willpower. Look, we're all searching for that secret, right? That little hack to unlock our brain's full potential. But what if the most popular advice out there isn't just wrong? What if it's actually making things worse? Let's get into it and separate the real science from the hype. And that quote really nails the problem. We're so desperate to be more productive that we've started gobbling up what you could call shelf science. You know, this advice that's beautifully packaged by influencers who, well, they might not have a deep grasp of how our nervous system actually works, and it's leading us straight into a cycle of burnout and frustration. So, to cut through all that noise, we're grounding this whole explainer in the solid work of Marynês Pereira. She's a specialist with over 40 years of experience in neurobusiness. We're going to unpack the real science to help us build a much smarter, more resilient way of approaching our work and, our lives. Okay, first up, we have to talk about the single most misunderstood molecule in the entire self-help universe, dopamine. So the story you've probably heard is that dopamine is our pleasure molecule, right? And we're burning through our supply with all these cheap thrills. But the actual science tells a totally different story. Dopamine isn't about feeling pleasure. It's the molecule of desire. It's the engine that makes us want things, seek them out, go searching. It's all about the chase, not the catch. So then what actually triggers it? Well, the fancy term for it is reward prediction error. But all it really means is that your brain doesn't release dopamine when you get a reward. It releases it when the reward is unexpected. Think about it. Getting a surprise bonus at work feels amazing, right? Or that random notification on your phone that might be something interesting. That novelty, that uncertainty, that's what gets the dopamine flowing. And this changes everything. It means the problem with being overstimulated by our phones and everything else isn't that we're somehow running out of dopamine. No, the real issue is that our receptors are getting desensitized. Now, I love this analogy from the source material. Imagine you have a radio that's just blasting at full volume all day long. After a while, you completely lose the ability to hear the quieter, more nuanced sounds. That's exactly what's happening to our motivation. The constant barrage of high-stimulus alerts and content just raises the baseline for what it takes to feel motivated for the important, long-term stuff. So here's the crucial takeaway. Motivation is a balance. Dopamine is just the accelerator. It's the gas pedal that gets you going on the chase. But that feeling of true satisfaction, that mission accomplished feeling, that comes from totally different systems involving things like opioids and endocannabinoids. If you're only ever hitting the dopamine button, you're creating a person or a team that is just constantly chasing but is never ever satisfied. And that is a one-way ticket to anxiety and burnout. All right, let's tackle the second huge myth, which ties right into this. The idea that your brain is just lazy. Get a load of this. Your brain makes up only about 2% of your body's weight, but it burns through a whopping 20% of your total energy. 20%! This thing is not a slacker. It's a high-performance, incredibly power-hungry machine. And because it's so expensive to run, its number one priority is efficiency. So your brain isn't looking for shortcuts because it's lazy or doesn't want to work. It's looking for the path of least uncertainty to save that precious fuel. It's a survival feature, not a character flaw. There's a core principle for this called minimization of free energy. Basically, your brain is a prediction machine. It's constantly trying to guess what's going to happen next so it doesn't have to waste energy figuring everything out from scratch every single second. So, when you find it hard to start a new habit or your team resists a new workflow, it's not a lack of willpower. It's your brain's biological defense system kicking in to avoid the huge energy cost of uncertainty. And that brings us perfectly to our third myth, which is all about how our brains actually change, a concept we all know as neuroplasticity. We get sold this idea all the time, right? That your brain is like Play-Doh, and you can just reshape it with the weekend course or some new app. Not only is that false, it's actually pretty dangerous. The reality, especially for us adults, is that neuroplasticity isn't about instantly creating brand new things. It's a slow, biologically expensive process of refining and strengthening the pathways we already have. It's less like building a new house from scratch and more like upgrading the wiring in a house that's already built. And this slide really breaks down what that process looks like. Real adaptation needs 4 key things. First, you need focused repetition. Then your brain has to prune away the old, useless connections to make room. Third is myelination, which is basically like adding thicker insulation to the important electrical wires to make them faster. And fourth, and this is the one we always skip, is sleep. Sleep is when your brain actually consolidates what you've learned and takes out the trash. Without proper rest, no real, lasting change can happen, period. So let's tie this all together. What does this actually mean for us, right here, right now, trying to build careers that don't burn us out? I mean, especially now in this age of AI, an AI that is often trained on the very internet myths we've just been debunking, how in the world do we navigate all this neuro-hype and find a path that actually works?
Well, the answer really boils down to a few key ideas. First, you have to respect your brain's energy budget. It's not infinite. Second, we need to shift our focus from just chasing that dopamine high of desire to actually cultivating real satisfaction. Third, we have to accept that real change takes time, consistency, and a lot of rest. It's not about just gritting your teeth. And finally, you have to become a ruthless filter for information. Question where your brain hacks are coming from, because a lot of our tech is just reflecting our own bad science back at us.
And I really want to leave you with this powerful metaphor. Think of your career as the show, the performance that everybody sees. But backstage? Backstage is your biology. It's a rigorous, organic reality. And it simply does not run on improvised scripts that are based on myths. Understanding and respecting what's happening backstage is the absolute first step to building a career that isn't just successful, but is actually sustainable. This whole deep dive was made possible by the incredible work of Marynês Pereira in her article on Neuro-Myths. Thanks so much for joining me.